How long have you been at Cabrillo?
35 years. When I say that, it's like, it's been decades, since 1980. Yeah. So this will be my 36th year.
And I know that you've been teaching students for a long time and that you're one of the most popular teachers they have there. The students all tell me that, and I believe it because I've been in one of your classes.
That's right.
But,
California natives.
That's right. How do you find that your teaching these days has changed to meet the needs of students to understand climate change?
Well, I've been involved and interested in drought-tolerant landscapes since 1975 when I worked on a project in Sacramento on a drought-tolerant demonstration garden for the last drought that was really noticeable in 1975, 76, 77. So what has changed in that time is not a whole lot, because that's always been my emphasis. My textbooks are always about plants and landscapes for summer dry climates, which is a book that the East Bay Municipal Utility District writes, so it's localized. Things like this tree, however, what's going on here is explaining to students that climate change is bringing in results or situations we haven't encountered before. This tree has been in the ground for 20 years. It's never had fire blight. This year it has a big case of it, and I didn't prune it before you came because I wanted you to see it. Then I've noticed that ornamental pears in many commercial landscapes also have fire blight. I have stood in the parking lot and looked, and every single one of them has it.
So this is the sign of fire blight?
That is fire blight.
Up there.
And you can prune this out, but you have to sterilize your pruning tool with each cut. Otherwise, you're just spreading the problem. So this is an Asian pear. So we'll be enjoying the fruit later.
Yeah. So I've heard from a cherry grower that for the second season in a row she hasn't had any cherries because the winter temperatures were too warm for the fruit to set.
Right.
And so 2 seasons in a row, no cherries for sale. And is there, did you notice anything about that?
I have noticed this year for the first time in my plant identification class, we study ornamental cherries, and they're right on campus, very handy for us to go down. I wait until April to study them when they're blooming. We go down to look at the trees in April, there's nothing. There's no leaves, there's no flowers, and I think, what's going on? Then on Pacific Avenue in downtown Santa Cruz, 1/2 of that street is lined with ornamental cherries, and they look the same. They have very few leaves, they have very few flowers. So to me, this and what's going on with the cherries are definite indicators of climate change.
And I see you have an apple tree here. How is your apple harvest this year, or the outlook?
This bloomed so prolifically last year, and this year I hardly even noticed that it was blooming. And yes, it still has fruit, but I would say 1/3 of the fruit that it had last year. And also, just because I teach edible landscaping, I would like to mention that there are actually 2 apple trees planted in the same hole. So that side of the tree is Granny Smith, and this side is Mutsu, or the reverse. I don't remember who is who anymore. But it's one way that people can get more fruit into a small space by putting several fruit trees, usually the same kind, in just one hole, 24 inches away from each other.
All right.
Lisa, now people are very, very cautious about watering their lawns, using water on lawns. And sometimes they feel they shouldn't water anything, that's the best thing they can do to help out our current situation. But I know you don't feel that way.
No.
And how do you advise your students about teaching about planting and landscaping for the home garden and so forth?
Well, there's a few factors. The obvious one to me is that we plant plants in the fall. When our rains are coming, the soil temperatures are cooler. The plants adapt more quickly. And then in sustainable landscaping, that class, I talk a lot about gray water, I talk about rainwater catchment. So we are going to continue to water the plants that need it. But it's also pretty amazing that I give these fruit trees get no water. That nectarine over there, no water. The apples, no water. And even the water-loving trees in the back, the Japanese maples and dogwoods, I give them very little water. They're well established. We need to water the plants that are just getting established. And we define the establishment period as the first 2 dry seasons. So I planted the cherry over here and the little nectarine 2 years ago. So this summer, last summer, they really needed the water. The cherry started to drop its leaves. That was a clue to me. I need more water. But in our home, people want to help, and so we take all the dishwater outside and we put it on the plants. I have no irrigation system. I am the irrigation system. The dog ate the irrigation system number 1. The gophers knocked the second one out. So we just basically mostly water the garden by hand. So that's one thing. Plant in the fall if at all possible. Second, mulch. Add wood chips, add horse manure, llama, chicken, whatever you can put on top to keep moisture in so that the plants can grow on and contribute to trying to reduce climate change.
And
this year is the big push because it's after last summer of putting all the dishwater out, and we collect all the shower water before the water gets warm, and that goes outside. So this year I started with 8 cubic yards because I wanted to mulch all these paths in the vegetable garden. I wanted to keep re-sheet mulch over there where you put cardboard down. You don't pull the weeds underneath the cardboard. The cardboard prevents sunlight from getting to the weeds, so they die.
Go over there and show us. Okay, so here you have sheet mulching in progress.
Yes.
And that's because of which plant now?
Well, it's a California native, and I don't like to speak ill of California natives, but our California native blackberry that's all along this hillside is fine for the birds eating the berries over there. But over the course of 25 years, they marched this way and they got to that mound that we planted, and I said, no, I'm sorry, but you can stay over there. So we cut down the berries. They were 3 or 4 feet tall. We cut that all down, and there's still a few trying to come up near the lavender, but I will deal with them later. So we put down all cardboard here, and then we put a layer of wood chips. The berries are tenacious. They want to come back, so they've popped up in locations, so we're just sheet mulching again, but this is 2 years later. Now we have this as kind of a quiet, meditative, open space in our garden. So I actually put the table and chairs there this morning. I thought, you know, you could hang out here. So I'm in the midst. So you don't have to be super particular and exact about the way you put the cardboard down, but 2 layers is always better than 1.
Okay, so what does the cardboard do? What are the things that the cardboard does?
The cardboard keeps all the sunlight from reaching the plants, so they can't photosynthesize. They rot underneath, and that's your first layer of organic matter going into the soil to feed the microbes that really do a great job of sequestering carbon in the soil for a long time. Then the cardboard breaks down, and that too, that's your second layer of organic matter. And then the wood chips break down, and that's your third contributor to enhancing your soil, to feeding the microbes, to feeding the life of the soil.
Okay.
And yes, if you have some blackberries, Himalayan blackberries, some poison oak in an area that you use a lot. I don't advocate you take poison out everywhere just because we have a reaction to it. But if you are highly allergic to it and you'd like to not have it affect you, then cardboard, wood chips, and then maybe 2 years later, cardboard and wood chips again. And then we'll just see. We did a small sheet mulch project in my sustainable landscaping class in the horticulture center. Bermuda grass was invading. And I said, well, this is a perfect place to try out sheet mulching, to show the students, to have them do it. So we did it 2 years ago, and we did it last year, and we will do it this year. What I discovered when the cardboard began to break down and the wood chips began to break down and little pieces of Bermuda grass were coming back up was that I went down to try to see if I could just pull out those few that had come back. The soil had gone from brick hard, you can't pull out any Bermuda grass, to something where 5 or 6 inches was just soft, and you could easily get that Bermuda out.
Of course, this is we're not used to a site like this, you know. And if you say 2 years and then another 2 years, that would challenge the aesthetics of the homeowner, right?
Well, let's go to another place where we have used sheet mulching where there are plants. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. Sheet mulching in a big area like that is not always what people have to work with. They have smaller planting areas.
Yeah.
They have areas that they see outside their windows that they want to look good.
Yeah.
And yet they want to do the right thing about climate change and contribute. I just planted this plant 3 or 4 days ago. Yes, I'm planting in the middle of summer. I'm watering it with dishwater. And I sliced the cardboard, which you can kind of see on the edge, and yes, I'll bring more of those wood chips and cover that up.
Yeah.
There were plants here that had died because they didn't get enough water. So I took those out and I put this plant in.
What is it?
It is Cantua buxifolia hot pants. It says, sacred flower of the Incas.
Okay.
Sun to part sun, 8 to 10 feet. So I'm planning on it to grow large in this area and shade out this pink flowering currant that I've discovered really would appreciate more shade than it's getting right here.
Okay.
So at least in the afternoon, this shrub will keep that soil moist and provide some shade. 8 to 10 feet tall, graceful arching stems covered in small green leaves. Blooms in spring with tubular bright magenta flowers. Attracts hummingbirds. Give good drainage. That's what you're going to get with your wood chips, is good drainage, especially in a clay soil. And moderate water, and hardy to 20 degrees. Well, that's pretty good for our area all the way up into the San Lorenzo Valley. So now as you take a look at this, I cut the cardboard, I planted the plant, I'm watering the plant, but one last thing I should do that aesthetically and water conservation wise makes sense is to get the wood chips around it, but not right on the crown or the base. That's an opportunity for rot because the wood chips are holding on to water. So now I, again, need to come back, and I've got 2 tags in case one gets lost. And I just need, there's some work that still needs to happen here. But people can sheet mulch an area, and like over here, this is all sheet mulched with cardboard and wood chips on top, and I just planted this penstemon. So the same thing, I sliced an X into the cardboard and then I planted it, and now I'm watering it in with soapy dish rinse water.
Okay.
I have yet to find a plant that's been bothered by that. One person told me one type of Ceanothus wild lilac did not like the gray water. That's the only thing I've ever heard. So this is part of a newer area of our landscape. And so obviously I would enjoy adding more plants here. So I will do the same thing.
Okay.
I will slice an X with scissors, a knife, and peel the cardboard back or fold it under. And then I will plant the plants, water them in, and then my hope is that when the establishment period is over, most of them won't need supplemental water. But my garden is an experiment station because I teach. I need to check plants out and tell my students, oh, you know, even though all the books say needs no water after 2 years, my experience says it's going to need a little bit of water, not much, for maybe year 3, 4, and 5.
So those are the big advantages. You add microbes and organic matter and carbon to the soil, and you reduce the need for water.
Well, it's not that you add microbes. The microbes are there.
Okay.
You're giving them enough food so that their population can proliferate.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing with plants that, like these redbuds, are growing large and they're dropping leaves, and the leaves go into the soil, and even their wood sequesters carbon. That's what that article Tom Carwin wrote. That was kind of newsflash for me. So I will share that with my students. We will talk more in sustainable landscaping about carbon sequestration by plants to positively affect climate change when I teach that class in the fall.
Lisa, this is very helpful stuff. Where would you say a home gardener, landscaper can go for resources to learn more about solving some of these problems in a sustainable way?
Well, we mentioned the book, Plants and Landscapes for Dry Summer Climates. That is a fantastic book. The photographs are fabulous. The information is an encyclopedia of plants for summer dry climates, which is what we have.
Would you name the title again?
Plants and Landscapes for Summer Dry Climates. It's published by the East Bay Municipal Utility District, which is their water district. And they've been publishing this book for 15 or 20 years, but this is the 3rd edition, and it's very, very good. The other resource are our local retail nurseries. From small scale retail nurseries to large scale, they all are being very responsive and have been for quite a long time to the reality that we have to plant plants that use the least amount of water. So those are the plants from the Mediterranean regions of the world. The Mediterranean Basin, lowland California, the southern and western coast of Australia, the central part of Chile, and
South Africa.
Thank you, South Africa, the tip of South Africa.
Where you would get blooms in winter if you want.
Yes, and some of the South African natives stay evergreen all year, whereas some of our California native plants, people think, oh, California natives, they're all drought tolerant. Actually, no, they're not. I mean, the redwoods, yes, these up on the skyline, they're drought tolerant now after 50 years. So not all California native plants are evergreen all year long without any water. So they're called summer stress deciduous. They drop their bigger leaves, they put out smaller leaves, so they transpire less. But the South Africans don't do that. So a combination of South African choices with California native choices can be very effective, so that the California natives can do what they're going to do, but the South Africans still look lush and evergreen.
Well, this is very encouraging to know that we can still enjoy our gardens in the midst of threats of climate change.
All right.
Okay. What people don't always recognize is that fruit trees, citrus trees, are pretty well established after about 5 to 10 years. And they don't need any water. So when we talk about that 2-year establishment period for lavenders or salvias, which have smaller root systems, if you see this much vegetation sequestering carbon, then the root system is as large, if not larger. The roots of this lemon probably go over here.
Cool.
So here's an opportunity to do the right thing, to sequester carbon by planting trees, but also we have lemons year-round on this tree. We have limes year-round on the lime tree, and they don't get any water. Unless I'm watering a container over here, some goes down the drain holes and a little bit of water gets on the ground. But otherwise, no. You don't need to water big, well-established trees. A Honey Babe genetic miniature peach.
Okay, if you wanted to plant that now, you'd have to water it consistently for about 2 years?
Yes, but remember, hopefully our rains come in October, but definitely by November. So from November to April, we're not doing any watering. So it's really that dry season, whenever that ends, February, March, April, May, until the rains come again. So yes, the first 2 dry seasons. Then in that 3rd season, because I want fruit, because fruit is moist, I might go ahead and in year 3 and year 4 in the dry season water it. And then I would just see how it goes in the 5th year. Does it really need water? It will tell you. The leaves will get kind of desiccated or dried up on the edges. And that's what happened to my little cherry tree over there. That's when I realized, okay, this is dry season number 3. It still needs water.
And with the prospect of having more droughts and more prolonged droughts, it's really important for people to think about strategically about what to plant and how much water will be needed, right?
Right. We typically overwater everything in the landscape. People water, when we had lawns, they would water it like every day, every other day, 3 times a week. That's so much more than a lawn needs. So I also talk to my students about creating meadows of California native grasses. No fertilizers, no pesticides, no herbicides. Mow twice a year and allow it, if you want to go golden in the summer, and then they pop right back up in the fall.
Okay, so the whole idea of every house has to have a manicured green lawn is doubtful, right?
Yes, it's something that people appreciate because it's serene, green, simple, that contrasts with all the complexity of the plants that are next to it. But we started a new venue this year at the Cabrillo Mother's Day weekend plant sale, lawn alternatives, and we had California native grasses, we had California native sedges, and we had low thymes. Some of those plants sold out the first day, and it only goes for 4 hours. Before 7 p.m. came, it was all gone. People want to have lawn alternatives that still have that same quiet simplicity, and they love green. I suggest they look to our native sedges instead of our native grasses if they want evergreen all year long, and 2 mowings and very little water.
Okay.
Once a month in the dry season instead of every 3 days or every 5 days.
But you don't have any of those here.
I don't, because, well, I have a few, but the gophers ate the 3 or 4 that I tried, and they only left the buffalo grass alone. But I'm going to try in another location underneath that pear tree that we saw that had the fire blight. I have some big plugs of our California native grass, purple needlegrass. So I'm going to try there and see if the gophers don't get to it so quickly. The other thing people can do is to put gopher wire down a few inches under the ground and then put their meadow in. Many people do that in the olden days when they were planting a lawn. The trick, of course, is what happens at the edges, because you don't want gopher wire sticking up.
Yeah.
And if you just have it below, how about the gopher comes skipping along the soil and then gets in and really can't get out?
Right.
So that's tricky. That's very tricky. So this is one of the several California native grasses. This is called eyelash grass because these flower heads, when they're fully mature, they look like eyelashes. They actually have a lot of black in them. When you use California native grasses in contrast to a lawn, these native grasses don't need mowing with the same crazy frequency that a lawn does. And in fact, it's kind of nice to let them grow a little bit bigger and looser and have their flowers blow in the wind. So this grass, you might mow if you wanted to keep it lower and not 2 inches tall, but maybe 3 to 4 inches tall. How about twice in the summer? How about that compared to a lawn?